address a couple of things today before we head into the new year. I know that one thing that's not on my slides that everybody's been asking is about FFCRA. Is it going to get extended? By its own terms, it is set to expire at the end of this year. As of right now, it is not extended, okay? If that changes, we will absolutely let you know. But now, with regards to this new CDC guidance, Ben, if you could go to the next slide, just wanted to cover this quickly because we covered it last week, but just a reminder, CDC has changed its quarantine guidelines. Previously, there was always a 14-day quarantine recommended after exposure, and they've lowered that. And keep in mind that I think the main reason that they're lowering it is that the CDC and governments in general are trying to find some balance here between keeping the economy open and protecting everybody. So I think that that's a lot of what's going on here. I think 14 days is still the best, and that's what CDC is telling us. But under this new quarantine guideline, if you have close contact exposure, you can have a quarantine of 7 or 10 days, depending on your test results and your symptoms. And keep in mind that close contact is 15 or more cumulative minutes within 6 feet of someone, masked or unmasked, over a period of 24 hours. Then next slide. Again, 14-day quarantine is still best, but if you want to move to under the new guidelines, it could be providing you're made symptom-free. It can be after 10 days following close contact, or after 7 days with a negative test taken within 48 hours of the final day of quarantine. So after 5 days of close contact, you take a test, you get a negative test, you can stop quarantining after 7 days. Of course, some test results in some parts of the country are taking longer than 48 hours anyway, so that might not work as well. But certainly you could do 10 days, and keep in mind you have to be symptom-free. Next slide. And even with, no matter what quarantine you're using or your employees are using in your case, you still want to be following the guidelines, right? You still want to be using masks correctly and consistently, still want to be doing your social distancing, still practicing hand and cough hygiene, still cleaning, still avoiding crowds, and still trying to get as much adequate indoor ventilation as you can. Next slide. And of course, if someone develops symptoms during the quarantine period, they should be treated as a presumed positive case, isolate, and be subject to all relevant health guidelines. And what does that mean? Next slide. That means you isolate for at least 10 days until symptoms first appear, and you go 24 hours without a fever, not using fever-reducing medications, and other symptoms are improving. CDC notes that there are certain symptoms like loss of taste and smell that can last for months. So those are not the concerns as much as all the other symptoms that you want to see improving. All right, so that's what's going on currently with CDC around quarantine. Pennsylvania has also adopted this 10-day quarantine. And so now for travelers, instead of doing the 14-day quarantine, you can do a 10-day quarantine. And then the other big news of the week. And so we are getting a ton of questions on this on Hotline, and that's why I wanted to address it. Vaccinations have started. If you've been watching the news, they've been publicizing healthcare workers in a number of states have started getting vaccines. And you've also probably seen that there is kind of a hierarchy of who's going to get the vaccine first because we have limited availability. It's going to be healthcare workers, it's going to be residents in group homes, nursing homes, then probably frontline workers, people who deal with the public, and then moving to the general population. The hope is that by spring of 2021, there will be more availability within the general population. And I also heard that the Moderna vaccine, currently the Pfizer vaccine is the one that's being administered. The Moderna vaccine is getting closer and closer to its own administration. So we should have more doses out there soon. And what everybody's asking, what should we do? Should we be requiring the vaccine? So the first thing to remember, just what I just said, limited availability. You can't require something that people can't get. So think about that and think about your timeline. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, an employer can establish legitimate health and safety requirements that are job-related and consistent with business necessity. So what does that mean? It means if your employees deal regularly with the public, maybe you have that job-related need, maybe you have that consistency with business necessity. If you have employees exclusively working from home and you've said we're going to let you work from home till June, you don't have that business need, right? So that's your first issue. And we can, when we look to what we're going to do about COVID vaccines, let's think about what we did about flu vaccines. So in the healthcare setting, a lot of employers have mandated the shots, and the court system has generally said that that's okay to do. But other than that, outside of that context, most employers have not mandated flu shots, and I think it's going to be hard for them to mandate COVID shots. Now, keep in mind, there are going to be legal challenges to this, okay? So we're going to see, and that's another question for you as an employer. Do you want to be the test case, right? Do you want to spend the time, energy, and money fighting a lawsuit on this? Or maybe you want to let some of the bigger companies fight that fight and stand by and take a slightly more conservative approach. If you do decide to mandate vaccines, keep in mind there are reasonable accommodation requirements under both the ADA for disability purposes and under Title VII for religious purposes. So that's something you would have to work into your process. And then, of course, the carrot and stick approach. You've got to think this through. If you're going to mandate the vaccines and then some of your employees refuse, what then? Are you prepared to fire people over this? You know, we're in a difficult economy right now. Still hearing from a lot of our members that even with a lot of people out of work, hiring is still tough. Do you want to let good people walk out the door and then have to spend the time, energy, and money recruiting, hiring, and onboarding and training new people? Think about that. And again, like I said, legal challenges. Do you want to be the test case? Maybe when you think it all through, the carrot approach is a much better approach. And we talked about this around flu vaccines as well. Make it as easy as possible for people to get the COVID vaccine when it becomes available. First of all, educate. Use information from the CDC, use information from your Department of Health to educate your employees about how important the vaccine is, that it has been proven safe, and that it's an important public health measure to get the vaccine. Look into your insurance. I've heard that most insurance plans are going to cover this. It's going to be free to most people, but double check with your carrier, your broker. Make sure, and then tell your employees, hey, this is going to cost you anything. And then, make it easy. I wonder if we'll see COVID clinics like we see flu clinics, where one of the pharmacy chains will come to your workplace and administer the vaccine. Maybe that'll happen. If not, give your employees maybe an hour of paid time off to go get the vaccine. Make it as easy as possible for them to do it. Tell them where they can go, when they can go, help them make the appointment if necessary, and use that carrot approach instead of the stick approach. But that's all that I wanted to cover for today. I don't know, since I'm not in Zoom, I can't see if we have any questions.
Give me one sec here. My chat's not opening. Someone said, what if COVID plus thoughts on repeat testing? Yeah, I don't know if it's a commentary, but Amy, do you see employers beginning to kind of require frequent testing of their employees?
Just regular sort of
right.
Not because they're showing symptoms.
Sports teams doing it, but have you observed that with any employers at this point, or is it?
I have not seen that. I think we're still in a situation where it's hard enough to get tests that it becomes difficult to do that, and maybe cost prohibitive to do that because the tests are still pretty expensive. So I have not seen that widespread. And the problem too with that testing is just because someone tests negative doesn't mean that they don't have it. And I think we've seen that now enough. You can be asymptomatic. You can not have enough virus in your body to test positive, even though you've been infected. And a couple of days later, it turns out that you get the virus and you've already spread it. So I haven't seen employers willing to make that time or financial commitment investment for something that probably is not the best tool.
And somebody asked a question whether there's been any indication that Department of Education will freeze student loan garnishment into 2021. I guess that's part of
the student loan issue?
Yes, right.
Yeah, I think that is being discussed as part of the stimulus package. If Congress can get their act together and pass that, I think that is going to be part of that package the way I've heard it.
I think that's it. So once again, thank you for everyone for joining us. We hope you have a safe and happy holiday season, and we look forward to seeing everybody again on January 5th. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks.